The Grand Chamber of the High Synod was not merely a room. It was a testament to 10,000 cycles of unbroken dominance, a cavernous hollow carved from the living obsidian of the moon designated Zaltora. The walls, polished to a mirror sheen, reflected the bioluminescent glow of the delegates, creating a dizzying, kaleidoscopic effect that suggested the universe itself was watching their deliberations. The air was thick, recycled and scented with ozone and the faint, metallic tang of nervous pheromones. High Counselor Vrax sat upon the dais of truth, his chitinous plating shifting uneasily against the cold stone of his throne, his compound eyes twitching as he surveyed the assembled representatives of the Ethelgard hegemony. They were the masters of the Orion Arm, the architects of the Pax Ethelgard, and the undisputed apex predators of the known political landscape. Yet silence hung over the chamber like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. It was not the silence of respect. It was the silence of a predator that hears a twig snap in the darkness and realizes, for the first time in an age, that it might not be alone. In the center of the room, a holographic projection flickered, casting long, distorted shadows against the obsidian. It displayed a sector of space that was supposed to be empty, the null void, a region of dead stars and gravitational anomalies where no ship dared to venture, a graveyard of navigation systems and foolish explorers. But there, amidst the static and the swirling dust of a nebula that bled violet and bruised crimson, something drifted. It was not a rock. It was not a comet. It was a structure of such immense, impossible scale that the initial sensor readings had been dismissed as a glitch in the logic cores of the long-range scanners. It was a vessel, jagged and scarred, a silhouette that defied the elegant, curved aesthetics of Ethelgard engineering, a brutalist monument to function over form, drifting in the silence of the void like a dagger suspended in black water. "The readings have been confirmed 3 times, High Counselor," Sub-Admiral Calith said, her voice a low chitter that resonated through the acoustic dampeners of the chamber. She stood at the base of the dais, her posture rigid, her mandibles tight against her faceplate. She was a warrior of the void, a veteran of the suppression campaigns against the lesser species of the fringe, but there was a tremor in her voice that she could not entirely suppress. "The object is artificial. Its mass exceeds that of a Class 1 planetary station, yet it possesses the thermal signature of a warship. The alloy composition is unknown, denser than durasteel, resistant to every spectrum of scan we have directed at it. It is ancient, High Counselor. The carbon decay on the outer hull suggests it has been drifting in the null void for longer than the hegemony has existed." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the assembly, a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. Vrax leaned forward, his primary eyes narrowing as he scrutinized the grainy image. The object was a leviathan, a dark, angular beast bristling with weapon emplacements that seemed too large, too crude, and yet terrifyingly purposeful. It bore no markings of any known civilization, no elegant script of the old races, no glowing warp nacelles of the Ethelgard. It was a dead thing, a ghost from a time before history began. "Impossible," Counselor Thuln, the representative of the merchant guilds, spat, his voice dripping with skepticism. "A ship of that magnitude requires an economy of a dozen systems to construct. It requires a logistics chain that spans light years. If such a civilization existed, we would have found their ruins. We would have found their echoes. We are the inheritors of the galaxy, Calith. There are no giants left but us." "Perhaps," Calith replied, her voice cooling, regaining its steely edge. "Or perhaps we are merely the inheritors of a graveyard we have never bothered to explore." The sensors detected a faint energy signature emanating from the core of the vessel. "It is not dead, Counselor. It is sleeping. And whatever sleeps in the null void does not wake with kind intentions." Vrax raised a hand, silencing the rising debate. "The Xyloxy Dominion," he said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. "Do they know?" Calith hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Our spies in the Xyloxy High Command report a mobilization. Their 4th Fleet has broken orbit from the Antares sector. They are moving toward the null void at maximum warp. They believe it is a weapon, High Counselor. They believe it is the key to breaking the stalemate. If they claim that vessel, if they unlock its secrets before we do, the balance of power shifts irrevocably. The Pax Ethelgard ends." The gravity of the statement settled over the room. For centuries, the Ethelgard and the Xyloxy had existed in a state of Cold War, 2 superpowers circling each other, neither willing to risk total annihilation. But a variable of this magnitude changed the equation. It was a catalyst. It was a temptation too great to ignore. "Then we must be faster." Vrax declared, rising from his throne, his shadow stretching long and terrible across the projection. Mobilize the first armada. I want the Pride of Zaltora to lead the vanguard. We will secure this object. We will dissect it. And if it poses a threat, we will cast it into the nearest star. But we will not let the Xyloxy take it. This galaxy belongs to us by right of conquest, and I will not see it usurped by scavengers picking through the trash of a forgotten age. The order was given, and the machinery of an empire began to turn. But as Vrax looked back at the hologram, at the dark, silent shape drifting in the void, he felt a cold knot of dread tighten in his gut. The ship looked less like a prize and more like a tombstone, and he could not shake the feeling that by disturbing it, they were not securing their future but walking blindly into a past that had been buried for a reason. The journey to the null void was a passage through madness. The region was a scar on the face of the galaxy, a place where the warp currents were turbulent and unpredictable, tearing at the shields of the Ethelgard ships as they forced their way through the fabric of spacetime. Admiral Calith stood on the bridge of the Pride of Zaltora, the flagship of the hegemony, a vessel of sleek curves and shimmering energy fields that was the pinnacle of their technology. Yet as they dropped out of warp and the real space sensors cleared, her ship felt suddenly fragile, a toy boat tossing on a dark ocean. There it was, the hologram had done it no justice. The alien Dreadnought dominated the visual feed, a mountain of dark metal that blotted out the stars. It was pitted and scarred, the hull marked by the impacts of meteors and the burns of weapons fire from wars that must have shattered planets. It was not sleek. It was industrial, brutal, a blocky, utilitarian nightmare of redundant armor plating and massive kinetic cannons that pointed silently into the dark. It measured nearly 40 kilometers in length, dwarfing the Pride of Zaltora by an order of magnitude. It hung in the silence, rotating with a slow, agonizing majesty, surrounded by a debris field of its own shedding armor. "Spirits of the void," Calith whispered, her mandibles trembling. "The density scans the mass, it has its own gravity well. We are being pulled into orbit around it." "Admiral," the tactical officer called out, his voice pitched high with panic. "Xyloxy signatures detected. They are dropping out of warp on the far side of the artifact. 3 battle cruisers and a support fleet. They are hailing us." "Ignore them," Calith snapped, her eyes fixed on the giant. "Shields to maximum, weapons hot but do not fire unless fired upon. Our priority is the artifact. Launch the scan probes. I want to know what is inside that thing." The tension on the bridge was palpable, a physical weight that pressed down on the crew. The Xyloxy fleet moved aggressively, their jagged insectoid ships fanning out in an attack formation, their weapon ports glowing with green plasma energy. They were posturing, trying to claim the territory, but even they seemed hesitant to approach the massive derelict too closely. Both fleets were flies buzzing around the corpse of a dragon, wary that the beast might merely be feigning death. "Probes are approaching the hull," the science officer reported. "Readings are confusing. The metal is absorbing the scanner waves. I am getting echoes, ghost data. Wait, I am detecting an energy spike. Internal power grids are coming online. It's waking up." The declaration sent a shockwave through the bridge. On the main screen, the dark Leviathan began to change. Lights, harsh and white, flickered to life along the length of the hull, running like veins of lightning through the dark metal. Massive vents opened, venting plumes of crystallized gas into the void as the ancient engines cycled for the first time in millennia. The sheer vibration of the startup sequence rattled the sensor arrays of the Ethelgard ships miles away. "It detects us," the tactical officer screamed. "Locking signatures, it is locking onto everything." "Evasive maneuvers," Calith roared. "All ships scatter." But the Dreadnought did not fire. Instead, a signal blasted across all frequencies, a transmission so powerful it burned out the communication buffers of the smaller escort ships. It was not a code. It was not a binary stream. It was a voice. A voice speaking a language that was guttural, hard, and devoid of the melodic tones of the Ethelgard or the clicking syntax of the Xyloxy. The universal translators struggled for a moment, the AI algorithms churning through databases of dead languages, searching for a match. Then the translation clicked into place. The voice was calm, weary, and possessed of an authority that made the blood run cold. "This is the United Earthship, Indomitable. You have entered a quarantine zone designated by the Terrasol Concordat. Identify yourselves and power down your weapons, or you will be categorized as a hostile entity. You have 10 seconds to comply." Terrasol, the name meant nothing to Calith. It appeared in no history books, no star charts, no legends. but the tone of the warning was unmistakable. It was the tone of a parent scolding a child who had found a loaded gun. "Open a channel," Kalith ordered, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Broadcasting on all frequencies." The screen flickered, and the image of the Dreadnought was replaced by a face. It was a bipedal creature, soft-skinned, lacking the protective chitin of the Ethelgard or the crystalline lattice of the Xyloxy. It had tufts of hair on its head and eyes that were binocular, forward-facing predator eyes. The being wore a uniform of dark gray, adorned with simple geometric symbols. It looked at Kalith not with fear, not with anger, but with a profound, exhausted patience. "I am Admiral Kalith of the Ethelgard hegemony," she said, trying to project the strength of her station. "We claim this sector by right of expansion. Identify yourself, alien." The human on the screen blinked slowly. "I am Captain Valerius, and you claim nothing here, Admiral. This vessel has been holding this line for 5,000 years. If you are seeing this, it means the sleep cycle has been interrupted. Why are you here?" "We are here to secure this vessel," Kalith said, her voice hardening. "Surrender your ship and prepare to be boarded. You are outnumbered and outgunned." A small, dry smile touched the human's lips. It was a terrifying expression. "Outgunned? Admiral, look at your sensors. Look at the energy output of my main reactor. You are not threatening me. You are standing in the blast radius of a supernova and lighting a match." Before Kalith could respond, the Xyloxy made their move. The rival fleet, seeing the Ethelgard hesitation as weakness, opened fire. Green plasma torpedoes streaked across the void, impacting the hull of the Indomitable. Explosions blossomed along the dark metal skin of the human ship, silent flashes of violence. "Fools," Kalith hissed. "They will destroy the prize." But the smoke cleared, and the Indomitable was untouched. A shimmering field, barely visible, had absorbed the impact, the energy rippling away like water off a duck's back. The human captain on the screen sighed, a sound of deep disappointment. "Strike one," Valeria said. The Dreadnought shifted. It did not turn. It simply rotated its weapon batteries with a mechanical precision that was too fast for something so large. A single turret, dwarfing the Xyloxy flagship, adjusted its elevation. There was no charge-up time, no warning glow. A beam of solid kinetic energy, accelerated to a fraction of the speed of light, erupted from the barrel. It punched through the shields of the lead Xyloxy cruiser as if they were paper, shattered the hull, and cored the ship from bow to stern in a millisecond. The cruiser didn't explode. It simply disintegrated, turned into a cloud of expanding vapor and debris. Silence returned to the void, absolute and terrified. "I will not repeat myself," Valerius said, his voice level. "Power down your weapons. We are not here to conquer you. We are not here to fight you, but we will not allow you to break the seal. This is your only warning." Kalith stared at the cloud of debris that used to be a Xyloxy cruiser. Her mind raced, recalculating every assumption she had ever made about the galaxy. These humans, they were not a new player. They were the masters of the board who had stepped away from the game so long ago that the pieces had forgotten they existed. "Power down," Kalith whispered. "Admiral," her tactical officer asked, stunned. "Power DOWN," she screamed. "Drop shields, disengage targeting, do exactly what he says." One by one, the lights of the Ethelgard fleet dimmed. The surviving Xyloxy ships, witnessing the instant obliteration of their leader, followed suit, their aggression replaced by primal terror. The Indomitable hung above them, a sword of Damocles, its weapons tracking them with cold indifference. "We have complied," Kalith said, her voice trembling. "What is your intention, Captain Valerius? If you are this powerful, why have we never seen you? Why do you hide in the dark?" The human leaned back in his chair, and for the first time, Kalith saw the background behind him. It was not a bridge. It was a library. Shelves of physical books lined the walls, ancient artifacts, wooden furniture. It looked more like a scholar's retreat than a war room. "We do not hide, Admiral," Valerius said softly. "We wait. We are the custodians. You call this the null void. We call it the cell. Do you know why this sector is empty? Do you know why the stars here are dead?" "Natural phenomenon, Ka." Elite said, "Entropy." "No, it was a war your ancestors were too young to remember, a war against something that does not belong in this reality. We won, but the victory required a cost. We built the Indomitable not to rule the galaxy, but to watch the door. We put ourselves in stasis, set the alarms, and waited. We hoped we would never wake up, because if we woke up, it meant the door was knocking back." Kalith felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. What door? The rift, Valerius said. The sensors detected your arrival, but they also detected something else. A resonance frequency. Someone has been tampering with the dimensional barriers nearby, the Xyloxy. Kalith looked at the sensor readings from the Xyloxy fleet. They have been experimenting with subspace-tearing weapons, forbidden technology. Valerius closed his eyes. Then they have already rung the dinner bell. As if on cue, the space behind the Indomitable tore open. It was not a warp gate. It was a wound in the universe, a jagged tear of bleeding reality that poured forth a darkness darker than space itself. From the rift, shapes began to emerge, shifting, geometric nightmares that defied physics, entities of pure entropy that seemed to eat the light around them. The Shard-Eaters, Kalith gasped. They were myths, monsters from the nursery rhymes of the Ethelgard said to devour sons. The Scourge, Valerius corrected. Battle stations. Admiral, if you want to live, you will link your fire control systems to my tactical network. I need your fleet to act as a point defense screen. My main batteries are for the rift entities. Do not let the smaller ones touch my hull. If the Indomitable falls, the seal breaks completely, and your empire, your history, your future. It all ends today. The arrogance of the High Synod, the politics of the Council, the rivalry with the Xyloxy, it all evaporated in that instant. Kalith was no longer an admiral of the hegemony. She was a soldier standing on the wall, and the night was coming. Link the systems, Kalith ordered. Do whatever he says, alert the Xyloxy, tell them to fight or die. The battle that followed was a chaotic symphony of destruction. The Indomitable was a titan of war. It moved with a grace that belied its size, spinning and drifting, its point-defense cannons creating a wall of lead and fire that vaporized the smaller horrors pouring from the rift. Its main cannons, the ones that had erased the Xyloxy cruiser, fired rhythmically into the rift, pushing back the massive, writhing entities that tried to force their way through. Kalith watched in awe as the human ship coordinated the chaotic fleet of two alien empires. The human tactical network seized control of their systems, optimizing their firing solutions, adjusting their shield frequencies to match the phasic shifts of the enemy. It was not just superior technology, it was a superior philosophy of war. The humans fought with a calm, mathematical efficiency. There was no rage, no glory-seeking, only the grim necessity of the task. For hours, the void burned. Ships died. Hundreds of Ethelgard and Xyloxy sailors were extinguished in flashes of plasma, but the line held. The Indomitable took a massive hit, a tentacle of shadow smashing into its flank, crumpling armor plating like tin foil. Captain Valerius, your hull integrity is failing, Kalith shouted over the comms. Hold the line, Admiral, Valerius's voice came back, strained but unbroken. We have one shot to seal this. We have to overload the rift drive. I am going to detonate the secondary core. That will destroy your ship. It will close the door. That is what the ship is for. The realization hit Kalith like a physical blow. The humans hadn't built a Dreadnought to survive. They had built a bomb. A sacrificial altar to save a galaxy that didn't even know they existed. No, Kalith said, the word surprised her. No, we will not let you die for us. All ships, divert auxiliary power to the Indomitable, feed their shields. If they are the key, we are the armor. Form a phalanx around the human ship. It was a maneuver that defied all Ethelgard military doctrine. To sacrifice one's own protection for another was madness. But the order was obeyed. The Xyloxy, seeing their rivals move, followed suit, perhaps driven by shame, perhaps by survival instinct. The two fleets closed in, forming a sphere of steel and energy around the wounded giant, taking the hits, absorbing the horror. Inside the Indomitable, Valerius watched the sensor board. The alien ships were burning, breaking apart to protect him. He paused, his hand hovering over the self-destruct sequence. A look of profound surprise crossed his face. They are learning, he murmured to himself. Captain, Kalith shouted. We are buying you time. Use the main cannon. Seal the rift. Acknowledged, Valerius said. Initiating Omega Protocol. All ships brace for gravitational shear. The Indomita. Blees shuddered. The front of the ship opened, revealing a bore as wide as a city. Energy began to gather there, not kinetic, but something exotic, a singularity in a bottle. The light was blinding, a pure white star ignited in the darkness. With a sound that was felt in the bones rather than heard, the weapon fired. A beam of pure white light struck the center of the rift. The tear in reality screamed. a psychic shriek that echoed in the minds of every living being in the sector, and then collapsed. The darkness was sucked inward, the geometric horrors dragged back into their hell, and the rift snapped shut with a thunderclap that sent the fleets tumbling through the void. Silence returned. The Indomitable drifted, smoking, bleeding atmosphere, but alive. The Ethelgard and Xyloxy fleets were in tatters, floating amidst the wreckage. Kalith slumped in her command chair, exhausted, her blue blood dripping from a wound on her carapace. Status. "The rift is closed," the science officer whispered. "The entities are gone, we survived." The screen flickered. Valerius appeared again. He looked tired, his uniform torn, soot on his face, but his eyes were bright. "You surprised me, Admiral," Valerius said. "In 5,000 years of simulations, the probability of the younger races sacrificing themselves for the custodians was less than 3%. You have deviated from the model." "We are not variables in a simulation, Captain," Kalith said, her voice filled with a newfound dignity. "We are the Ethelgard, and today we are your allies." Valerius nodded slowly. "Perhaps. The awakening of the Indomitable was not an accident, it was a test. One we expected you to fail, but you didn't. The galaxy is more ready than we thought." "Ready for what?" Kalith asked. "For the truth," Valerius replied. "The Indomitable is not the only one. There are thousands of us. Buried in moons, hidden in suns, drifting in the dark spaces between galaxies. We are the immune system of this universe, and you have just proven that you are ready to be part of the body rather than the infection." The revelation hung in the air, vast and terrifying. The Ethelgard had thought they were the masters of the universe, only to find they were children playing in a nursery watched over by silent, sleeping giants. "What happens now?" Kalith asked. "Now," Valerius said, "we repair, we rebuild, and we talk, the Xyloxy, the Ethelgard, and Terra. The Council needs to convene, not to divide the spoils, but to prepare the defenses, because the rift was just a scratch. The real storm is still out there." A week later, the Indomitable was towed into the orbit of Zaltora. It was a sensation that shattered the cultural foundations of the hegemony. The High Synod was thrown into chaos, their arrogance dismantled by the presence of the human giant. The Xyloxy, humbled by the near annihilation of their fleet and the mercy of the humans, signed a permanent armistice. A summit was held aboard the Dreadnought. Vrax, Kalith, and the Xyloxy High Warlord stood in the library of the human ship. They walked past rows of physical books, touching the paper with awe. "Why paper?" Vrax asked Valerius, who walked with them, no longer a hologram but a flesh and blood man awoken from cryostasis. "Why not data crystals?" "Because data rots," Valerius said, picking up a leather-bound volume. "Digital memory can be corrupted, signals can be jammed, but this endures. This is the history of Earth, the history of our mistakes. We keep it so we don't repeat them. We destroyed our own homeworld once, before we became the custodians. We were petty, tribal, violent, just like you." "And how did you change?" Vrax asked, the arrogance gone from his voice. "We didn't," Valerius said. "We just found something bigger than ourselves to fight. We found the Shard Eaters. We realized that if we didn't stand together, we wouldn't stand at all. That is the lesson we offer you. You can be kings of a graveyard or soldiers in the army of life. The choice is yours." Kalith looked out the viewport at the Ethelgard fleet, repairing side by side with Xyloxy engineers, guided by human drones. She saw the future. It was not a future of conquest, but of duty. A heavy burden, but one they would not carry alone. "We choose life," Kalith said. Valerius smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. "Good, then welcome to the Terrasol Concordat. Orientation starts at 800, don't be late." The Dreadnought, once a symbol of fear, had become a beacon. The lost ship had not just changed history, it had restarted it. The Ethelgard and Xyloxy were no longer enemies, they were apprentices. And the humans, the ancient, weary humans, were no longer ghosts, they were the teachers. And as Kalith looked at the stars, she realized they were no longer cold and empty. They were full of sleeping giants waiting for the call. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the dark. She knew that in the shadows, something was watching over them. Something kind, something dangerous, something human. The galaxy spun on, but the silence was broken. A new age had begun, forged in the fire of the null void, bound by the promise of the Indomitable. The lost Dreadnought had been found, and in finding it, the galaxy had found itself. The Grand Synod chamber on Zaltora was quiet again, but the atmosphere had changed. The obsidian walls no longer reflected fear. They reflected the image of the Indomitable projected in the center of the room, a permanent reminder of the new reality. Vrax sat on his throne, but he sat differently. He sat not as a ruler, but as a steward. He looked at Calith, who now wore the insignia of the Joint Defense Fleet. "It is a strange feeling," Vrax said quietly, "to know we are small." "It is a liberating feeling," Calith replied. "We have much to learn." "Yes," Vrax agreed, "we have much to learn." And somewhere in the deep void beyond the rim of the galaxy, a signal pulsed. It was a simple code, sent from the Indomitable to the dark unknown. "Status awake. The children are ready. Stand by for uplift." And in the darkness, 1,000 other lights flickered in response. The Guardians were waking up. The long night was over. The dawn of the human alliance had arrived.